What if it was less about not drinking and more about being the woman you want to be? Wouldn't that feel better? Hi, my name is Holly Prevo, a former heavy drinker who started her own Soberish Uprising and everything in her life up-leveled. On the Soberish Uprising, we tell stories of finding freedom from alcohol on our own terms, making it our best power move to get the life we want. I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. So today I am joined by Nick. Nick, how are we today?
I am wow. Okay. I am outstanding. How about yourself?
Good. It's early in the morning, so we're still getting our voices going. Not early, but maybe my first call of the day. So yeah, I'm great. I'm looking forward to connecting.
I am happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, Nick, I'd love for you. We'll get into kind of who you are, and I'll share a little more like what piqued my interest when we connected. But would love to hear kind of who you are in the world and where you are, and just a little bit about yourself.
All right. Currently, I am a motivational speaker, author, and coach living in Tampa Bay, Florida, where I have been now for 19 years. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I grew up on the island of Martha's Vineyard. I am not rich. I'm the guy who served people coffee and muffins, and went to school at UMass, and I started my career in sales 22 years ago, which is part of what led me down here to Florida. And I recently left the logistics industry 4 months ago to become a motivational speaker.
Amazing. And I know I'm not going to even do it all justice, but when we connected, you're an endurance athlete, you've been sober 10 years, 4-time cancer survivor. So you have plenty of stories to pull from to motivate.
There's a lot of threads to pull from. I like to say that my story by itself isn't unique. What's sort of unique is the totality of all the things that make it relatable for other people.
Yeah, that's interesting because you said that. I mean, it's like I always say, like we're all like unique butterflies, and we're also not, right? Like we're all like there's always like this thread that we all can like relate to. So I love that you're able to pull all those together.
I think it's what you just said. It's like these threads, right? Or strings, if you will, going through time and the universe, right? Like when it's baked down to it, we are not very different from one another, but our experiences are very different because of how we experience them, when we experience them, the context of which we experience them.
Yeah. No, and it's so, it's an interesting dichotomy, right? Because we're like 1 in a billion creatures, but we're also like the themes, because it's like no matter what guest I've had, whether they are multiple DUIs, need to go to inpatient rehab, or they're just like, I'm drinking a little too much. It's like the same themes of letting themselves down and not being the person they want to be. So there's that strand that seems to be very similar.
Well, speaking for this alcoholic who absolutely suffered from terminal uniqueness, this inert desire to separate myself from everyone else and to feel that I'm different and to feel that I'm special is also what contributed me to separating myself from everyone else for so long.
Oh, let's start there. That's good. Tell me about this terminal uniqueness. That's good.
It's kind of like I just said, where I now believe that there is a lot more that unites us and separates us. I believe we are a lot more closely knit together than we're ever really able to see. But because our experiences take us to different places and the way in which we process our events, and just speaking for me, I grew up with alcoholic parents, one in recovery and one struggling. I grew up neglected. I basically I grew up wanting for love, right? Like I felt alone. I felt small. I felt scared. And the way that I process that is I built armor around me. And I hadn't realized this until very recently, but I cultivated this victim mindset for 35 something years. You don't realize you're doing it as the victim mindset, because what I was doing was being this gritty, tough kid. I didn't need your love. I didn't need your support. I didn't need this. I can do everything by myself. And I did. And I became more and more independent in the way that anytime I needed to justify an action or behavior was an opportunity for me to be like, to separate myself. Well, this person doesn't have my story. This person didn't go through what I went through. They don't have, they didn't have bad parents, or they didn't have,
Yeah.
these sort of traumatic things happen. And even when I was getting sober, and I remember in the first couple weeks sitting in a meeting and listening to people talk, and I wanted everything that they had except for one thing. And I kept thinking, I'm like, man, these people don't know though, because they're all older and I'm still out there, and I
Mm.
wasn't done fooling around. That's what that was about for me. And
Yeah.
so it was another excuse for me to separate myself and to try to
Ooh,
remain,
yeah.
unique. And it would have been real easy for someone like me now with a story like mine, four-time cancer survivor, type 1 diabetic, recovering alcoholic, 7 herniated discs from 2 different car accidents. I had meningitis, nerve damage, sleep apnea. I was
Mhm.
on a plane that terrorists called in a nerve gas bomb threat once. Like, there's a lot of different ways that I could call
Yeah.
myself unique and feel that that I'm different from other people, but then I'm just going to start justifying different and bad behavior all over again. And the
Mm.
fact is,
Mhm.
unique is isolation, and isolation is not good for someone with addiction, because that's
Yeah.
typically what we do.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I really like finding out that I'm not so different.
Mm.
The more vulnerable that I've been, the more that I share my story and
Yeah.
share fears. Like, I only just started learning this shit about my parents and childhood. Like, I really only started looking back into that. And the more I talk about it, the less power it has over me, the less unique
Mhm.
and isolated I feel.
Yeah.
I get the strength and power of everybody else who's gone through it too. Even if their experience and perspective isn't exactly the same as mine, I
Right.
don't need to use that as a divider. I can learn from it. I can benefit from it.
So good. So good. So I hear like this hyper independence, which makes total sense, right? If you had to raise yourself, you're like, nobody has it as much as me. And this like judgment on other people, right? Like you don't know what it's like to be this litany of things you've been through. And it's like a little bit of like martyrdom with the victimhood, right? Like a little bit
Absolutely. That's
of
a great way of putting
um
it.
and it makes sense, right? And it's like I love this idea of like you could choose to like be that person because those are all very intense things to happen to one person. Like that is a choice that you could have just been like, well, all this shit happened to me. This is who I am. So what shifted you from that
I love
victim
that word
mindset?
martyrdom. I don't know why that wasn't in my head.
Does it? Okay. Tell me about that.
So it took a while. So I got sober in 2014, and my
Mhm.
last drunk. Actually, let me go back a second. So the first time I had cancer, I was scared. The
Mm,
second time I had cancer, I was mad. The third
mm,
time I had cancer, I was relieved. And here's
mm.
why. Because about 4 months before I was diagnosed, I quit drinking,
For the
supposedly,
third time you
because
were
I was tired of other people's bull. The third time I had cancer,
yeah.
a few months
Okay.
before that, I had tried to quit drinking because I was tired of other people's bullshit.
Mm.
I didn't like them talking about me, so I said, "Screw it, I'll stop drinking." Well, how well do you think that was gonna work out? Stopping for other people, right? So,
Yeah.
and I hated it. I was miserable. I had no
Mm,
program, I had no support, I had no real why. Like, I wasn't doing it for the right reasons,
mm,
and I was
mhm.
white knuckling it, and I was miserable, and I was challenging everything, tempting fate. I went to every happy hour, every birthday, bought every round. It was just, and I was
Mm.
flirting with disaster, and I hated it. I had so much anxiety. And then I was diagnosed with cancer. And this time it was a tumor in the back of my neck, pressed up against my vocal cords, and they told me that they couldn't operate because of where it was. Now, let me just pause for a second, fast forward, and tell you that 10 years later, that tumor still takes up real estate in my neck. All right. It's not going
Mm.
anywhere.
Mhm.
I will die with it. I will not die from it. But that's not what I heard at the time. What I heard
Yeah.
at the time was I have inoperable cancer.
Mm.
And instead of being upset by it, bottoms up, because that was the excuse I needed to say, I don't care about other people's bullshit
Yeah.
anymore, and I can drink like I want. Who is going to mess with the guy who has inoperable cancer? And I hadn't realized this, because what I didn't tell you is in 2005, when I got cancer the first time, I didn't even want to tell anyone.
Mm.
And part of it was because I was afraid, but a big part of it is I didn't want anyone feeling sorry for me.
Mhm.
And now here we are in 2014, and I am actually cultivating people feeling sorry for me. How far I had drifted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it turns out it was one of the best things that could happen to me for real, though, because
Mhm.
it, I took the gloves off, I crawled deep into a bottom, and I found my bottom, which was a couple
Mm.
months later on the floor of a Las Vegas hotel, surrounded by cops and security, being told I had to leave because I had just tried to have sex with a hooker in a broom closet just 2 doors down the hall
Mhm.
from where my girlfriend was sleeping.
Mm.
I am
Yeah.
so grateful that I had nowhere to run, and what I mean by that is
Mm.
I was supposed to be the speaker at our conference the next day, and I was trespassed from the hotel. I couldn't go back. There was nowhere for me to hide. There was no story for me to spin. There was nothing to do but face the fact that this was my behavior. These were my decisions. And it took about 4 hours to find a hotel. And when we finally did, because my girlfriend got thrown out too, had to wake her up in the middle of the night.
Oh, man.
Oh yeah. When my head finally hit a pillow that night, I said out loud, I don't want to live this way anymore.
Mm.
Whew. It wasn't for other people anymore. It was for me. And I went
Yeah.
back home the next day and I called my dad. And my dad's got 40 years now. And I said,
Mm.
Dad, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm going to join a program tomorrow. I'm picking up a chip. Tomorrow's day one. And
Mm.
for some reason, I was expecting some admonishment from him of some kind. I don't know
Mm.
why,
Mhm.
Instead he goes, oh, thank God I've been waiting for you.
Mm.
And I can
Yeah.
only think that how hard it must have been for him those last couple of years
Yeah.
watching me and not saying anything because he knew
Mm.
if he did, he'd push me out there.
Yeah.
He just had to be a role model for sobriety. He had
Yeah.
to show me what life could be like. He
Mm.
used to buy me beers. We'd go out and shoot pool together. We'd go to concerts together. And he showed me that there is life without alcohol. And so when I got home that day, I wanted what he had.
Mm.
He was the
Mhm.
happiest guy I knew. And so it wasn't such a hard decision for me.
Yeah.
But that said, I wasn't done playing the victim because 2
Mm.
years later, I got cancer for the 4th time. And that time I expected to die.
Mm.
The diagnosis was we hadn't even got a diagnosis yet, and I was still convinced. I kept repeating that you can only get cancer so many times
Mm.
and not die.
Yeah.
And I was building this up in my head, and I had been so tough all these years, so gritty all these
Mhm.
years. I really thought I was this tough survivor and blah, blah, blah. Well, they took the cancer out. It was a simple surgery. There was no follow-up required after that.
Mhm.
No additional treatment. And I was all of a sudden like left with this blank space. And I had I had no enemy. I had nothing that I was playing the victim from. And it was that time when my boss walks in my office and he says, hey, I want to do a Spartan race and I want you to do it with me. I looked at him and I'm like, no, no,
No, thanks.
no,
Mm.
fuck no. That sounds terrible. An 8 to 10 mile trail run with obstacles? No way. I had
Yeah.
no intention of being that uncomfortable. And I went home that night and I thought about everything I had just walked you through. And that's when it really occurred to me that I hadn't overcome my adversity. I had only survived it. And I didn't want to
Mm.
be a victim anymore. It was that then that I decided that I was going to be a warrior. I was going to own my circumstances, own my responsibility,
Yeah.
or be responsible for everything that's happened to me in my life at that point. More importantly, everything that happens to me going forward is my responsibility, my choice.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be a victim to anyone or anything anymore. And it is a choice, and it was a choice.
Yeah. That's interesting. So like 2 years. So if I'm doing the math right, you're about 2 years into sobriety. You're surviving, right? You're not like, you're just like, you think you're thriving. You're like, oh, you look back, you're like, I'm being a martyr. I'm being a victim. I am just like flipping the bird to the world. And then the Spartan race opportunity is like, no, no, no. I'm going to be a warrior over my circumstances. Like I'm now going to take control over how I show up. Is that
It's
still
funny, you
accurate?
just said something that I like to make a comparison of. No, 100% is. And here's something
Yeah.
that for the longest time, it was me against the world, right? Like,
Hmm.
grew up without money, worked my way to get into college, worked my way through school, like, all these things, right? Me against the
Yeah.
world, me against the world. What
Yeah.
I've realized now is it can't be you against the world unless you think you're a victim of the world.
Mm. Yeah.
Unless you're the bad guy, you're looking at yourself as the underdog being victimized by the world. And now I want to give you a comparison about that first Spartan race. And let me ask you a question. When was the last time you went outside and played and you weren't afraid of getting your pants dirty?
It's been a while. I don't know.
Since we were kids, right?
Yeah, probably.
And that's what my first race experience, that's what that was like. You're out in the
Mm,
world, not against the world, in the
yeah.
world. Me and the elements,
Mhm.
getting muddy, getting dirty, getting gritty, and it was liberating. Like, I had
Mm,
built this bubble around myself like so many of us do for so long, and I was convinced I had to live in it. I
yeah.
couldn't do this because of my knees. I couldn't do this because of my sleep apnea, my diabetes. I was still living in this alcoholic mindset where
Mhm.
I was either the best at everything or the worst at everything, and it
Yeah.
was just so free to be out there in the world. Not me
Mm,
against it, just me in
yeah.
it, experiencing it, and I was like, "Wow, I want more of this."
Right. Well, and I love that I like that you're bringing attention to that because, like, I think a lot me against the world. I've done it myself. Hyper independence, like against in the definition of it, like somebody's got to win, right? It's you or the world, and you're just like, but it's not a competition. But I'm making it one, and so like at the end of the day, how does that serve me? Like, you can be super hyper independent, but does that help you? Like,
I think to a point it does.
yeah,
Like, I did have to be who I was for a while.
yeah,
I did because get this, I did pay my way through school.
mhm,
Like, and that's why I paid my way through school.
yeah,
I didn't pay my way through school and then become a victim or whatever. It's like I did it because I had this
yeah,
armor and because I had this grit and it had to be me. There just comes a point where it no longer serves you, where all of a
hmm,
sudden what you really built is a prison cell and you're just filling it
mm,
with poison all the time.
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't realize when that switch happens. And for me, that was the same with drinking. Like it was a superpower. I could
mm-hmm,
outdrink a lot of people. I could function at a high level. When I was a VP of sales, I had 100 people working for me. I had a girlfriend, I had a house, I had bills, I had relationships, I was part of clubs and active. I had all these things
hmm,
going for me. Every excuse in the world to not admit that alcohol was no longer a superpower for me, that it had become my
mm,
kryptonite. Because you don't
yeah.
realize the subtle thoughts, the subtle decisions. And when we focus on those high level things, I don't pay attention to my selfish and destructive decisions.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's a slip it's a the slope or like it's a slow rise, right? All of a sudden you're just like, "Oh, I built a box." And to your point, like our defense mechanisms, the way we were brought up, like it makes sense that that's who you were and it served you well. But it's always at any moment you have the opportunity to be like, "Wait, I built a box. This is not fun anymore. It is not me against the world. I am not a victim. I am not a martyr." And I'm choosing to believe differently.
And you just hit the nail on the head, right? Because there comes a point where it says, I choose. Because
Mhm.
it's I had to make that choice to no longer live like that
Mm,
anymore.
yeah.
To But it did serve me for a while, but you then have to
Yeah.
make a choice to sort of grow beyond it. Otherwise, you're
Mm,
still stuck in that. And the thing is,
yeah.
we as an individual person can only do so much, can only get so far. We as a
Yeah.
people, as a community,
Mm,
like everyone needs a wolf pack. Everyone needs a
yeah.
tribe, and we are so much more powerful together when you have the power of the community.
Yes. Well, you said that isolation and, you found so much power in, like, sharing your stories and seeing similarities from different people and knowing you're not alone. So how powerful was that for you as you started to, like, start sharing and seeing similarities between all sorts of people?
Well, let me say this. Have you seen the movie 8 Mile
I don't if I
with
have, it's been too
Eminem?
long. Yeah, I know of it, but yeah.
Okay. Well, there's like the whole battle rap thing going on, all right? And at the
Yeah.
end, there's a scene where his friends are like, "Hey, aren't you afraid all the stuff they're gonna say about you?" Like because
Mm,
he's white and like somebody messed with his girl, beat up his friend, like all this stuff. And he's like, "Hmm." So he goes out there and that was his rap, was making fun of himself. And then he tosses the
mm.
mic to the other guy and he's like, "Go ahead, tell them something they don't know about me." Well, there's a reason that I tell you the hooker story. There's a reason that I
Mm,
opened with that. It's the second
yeah.
chapter of my book because that incident no longer has power over me. Like,
Mhm.
I hate that guy. I hate who
Mhm.
I had become. I was
Yeah.
embarrassed by him, like, what a degenerate piece of shit. Like, I
Yeah.
don't like him, but I don't have to
Mhm.
loathe over that anymore. I'm not that guy. And
Yeah.
so I think it's so important to share things. Plus, here's the thing. This is who I am now, and nobody's gonna care about this if they don't know about that. And so
Mhm.
I've just learned that the more vulnerable and open I am, these things, even talking about stuff with my parents, like
Mm,
whether I recognize it or not, those things had a power over me and a hold over me that they no longer have over me.
yeah.
It's refreshing and liberating to
Mhm.
know that you aren't the only person experiencing things. And when you share these fears, I'm no longer afraid.
Mhm, mhm.
I
Yeah.
It really just is that simple.
I am shocked, and I know this, and I still get caught up in my own life, even outside of drinking, of like sharing something that you care shame. And when I say shame, it's not even like you've done something terribly wrong, right? Maybe it's you're just like a little embarrassed that you didn't do something you were supposed to, right? Like I'm always shocked, like just speaking it to a partner, to a spouse, to a friend, you're like, oh, it's gone. That's interesting. It's like phenomenal. Just speaking it out loud, like takes so much of the shame and weight of it out.
100%. I was actually asked about shame on a podcast I was on the other day. I'll
Mhm.
probably post that clip later today. I have no shame. None.
Mm,
I have no
mm.
regret. And
Yeah.
I've done plenty of crummy things.
Yeah.
I have remorse for people
Mm.
I've hurt that I have not been able
Yeah.
to, for sure. It's not like I have not absolved myself over everything, right? I'm aware of
Mm.
people that I've hurt, and there are people that I know that I probably have hurt that I'm not aware of too. But I
Mhm.
can't dwell on that anymore because I like who I am today. I have something that I can use to help other people today.
Mhm.
And I had to go through everything I went through. I had to be who I was in order to do that. And yeah, by
Yeah.
voicing it, by taking those things out, it removes that power and it does remove
Mhm.
that sort of shame. So it's also the acceptance that I'm not that person anymore.
Mhm.
So I'm not talking about me. I'm not trying to pretend that I didn't do a certain thing. It was an
Right.
older it was a different version of me,
Yeah.
but I'm not ashamed by it, like, because 'cause
Mm.
I'm not that
Mhm.
guy anymore. I've made changes in my life. If I go
Yeah.
back to it, then it's on me.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the difference? I love this idea. What's the difference for you? Or maybe let me rephrase that. How does remorse feel different than shame? Or like what are the difference for those two for you?
Just in the recognition that I've hurt other people,
Mm, mhm.
just
Yeah.
even just being cognizant, and aware that I
Yeah.
have done things to whether deliberately and more often than not deliberately or
Mhm.
adversely affected other people. And I didn't even have to be drunk, but it was definitely during my drinking time. And I'm thinking of my time as a sales leader,
Mm.
like just the people that I could have been better to, the people that I could have
Mm. Mhm.
taken my ego out of the equation. Like I could have
Yeah.
helped them. And so I don't regret it because I am who I am now.
Yeah.
Would I change it? No, because I am who I am now. I had to learn what I had to learn to get here.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'm, like, proud that I was a douchebag to somebody or that I
Right.
hurt somebody,
Yeah.
It's like, yes, the only way I know how to pay that forward, though, is by being a better person today than I was
Mhm.
yesterday and
Yeah.
continuously just looking to improve and like my father did for me, try to be the role model for
Mhm.
somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, God bless your father because, I mean, right? Like you got sober for other people and it didn't work, right? And so for him just to sit there and be like, when he's ready, because he knew that he 40 years, he's probably seen so many people that did try to do it for other people, and I've never seen it work for people changing for somebody or being sustainable.
And if they do, they hate themselves and everyone around them.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
because
It's
that's
not like
even if I had
effective.
made it, I was not living a life. I was not part of life.
Yeah. Well, and excuse me, I love this, this 10 years ago, Nick, right? And like you like don't you hate him, but like do you feel any sort of like sadness and love for him at all? Cuz like you had to get that bad to like come back up. Like do you feel any sort of like gratitude for him?
Candidly, I don't even know who he is. I
Yeah.
definitely don't feel bad for him.
Mm,
I definitely don't feel bad for him,
yeah.
but I don't know that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I honestly don't know him, and who I am at my core, I'm not a I have changed, but I'm not a different person, right? Like, I'm
Mhm.
still got the same heart and soul, like,
Yeah.
still have the same life experiences, but yet it was the alter ego that had taken over
Mm,
every aspect of my life, and so
mhm.
I don't know that guy. Like, I can't
Yeah.
he's just
Like
not
hard to
somebody I
understand.
understand it he's just not
Yeah.
somebody I understand anymore.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So tell me, you went to AA. Are you still an active member of AA? Is that part of your recovery?
Yeah, I attend meetings regularly.
Nice. Okay. Wonderful. And it sounds like your father was a big influence for you there as well.
Yeah, he was, and funny thing is I grew up around the program because of that, and I
Mhm.
didn't like it because of
Mm,
that, because you don't know what you don't know. And I actually used to blame the program for having selfish parents.
mm,
I didn't know any better,
yeah.
like I hadn't
Yeah.
seen them drunk. And thing is, I didn't understand that my mom wasn't really embracing a program. And so I really
Mm,
looked at her behavior. And, then I just sort of mistook that as I didn't really understand that, kind of like I do now.
yeah.
My sobriety comes before everything. And I mean everything. Like
Mhm.
my wife understands this.
Mm,
People in my life understand this. When I had a job, they have to understand this. It comes before my health. It comes before my money, because without number one, there is no number two.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
get that. Something that I wouldn't have understood a long time ago, that attending a program and trying to get sober was the least selfish thing they could have done.
Mm, yeah. 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 That's beautiful. Yeah, that is your number one priority every single day. Because to your point, nothing else happens if that doesn't happen.
I'm big on goal planning,
Mhm.
for everything, and I take I take my vision, and then I find a way to articulate it and define it into a tangible and achievable goals, and then
Mhm.
I break them down into weekly and daily objectives. And I look at the first thing I do every morning is that I have a 5-minute goal meeting with myself to literally check mark my progress. And
Mhm.
my number one goal every year is stay sober
Mhm.
365 days, one day at a time.
Yeah.
And so I literally open up my little goal book. I check mark the day.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
check mark meetings, readings, and any other sort of
Yeah.
activity that I'm doing. And is it important that I do that? Not from a goal perspective, like, I've basically created tasks for myself out of something I'm gonna do anyway.
Yeah.
The reason it's important that I do that first is I'm drawing my attention to the fact that my sobriety comes first.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's a way of not ever allowing other goals to interfere with that,
Mm.
because we can get swept up so much into the
Yeah.
pressures of life, like, "Oh, I got this bill, I got this meeting, I got this other thing."
Yeah.
Tough shit.
Yeah.
Because all those go away if I can't maintain my sobriety. That means more than anything. And, I haven't in the last 10 years, there might have been 4 or maybe 5 times that I've been uncomfortable around alcohol, or even considered or
Mhm.
thought, or the idea of a drink floated into my head or
Mhm.
something. So it's rare,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, I know where I don't wanna go back. I am glad I
Yeah.
have very vivid memories of the person that I used to be.
Yeah. Oh, I love that idea of every morning you're like, "This is it." Even because after what, 10 years, you're what, thousands of days in, like, you're just like, "Nope, this is still has to be, like, my number one focus and my intention every single day."
Without number 1, there is no number 2. The second
Yeah.
goal in my life is managing my diabetes, which is really just again, it's the big vision is, healthy living,
Mhm.
lifestyle fit, right? But a go people who say, "I wanna be in shape this year is my goal," 100% of them fail their goal.
Yeah.
That's not a goal. Like, you have to put something
Right.
tangible around it. And so for me, I use my diabetes as sort of the barometer. And so that's number
Mhm.
2, because if I can't maintain my health, then I'm not in a position to make money and live my
Right.
life and do the other things. So
Yeah.
all these things have to come in a priority.
Mhm. I love that morning check-in too, right? You're like, "Nope, this is it." Even though I know and I've known for the past 10 years, it just really kinda honing back in on that. So tell me a little bit,
I
how
think it keeps you humble.
yeah. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay. I spoke over you. Yeah, it
I
keeps you
was just saying
humble.
that I think it keeps me humble too,
Yeah.
It's all right.
Go ahead. Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, and tell me a little bit about your endurance, or actually tell me about your endurance sports that you do and how has that changed who you are in this next phase of sobriety?
So, the interesting thing, right? Like, I was 2 years sober when I found Spartan.
Mhm.
I definitely did not get sober through Spartan and
Mhm.
obstacle course racing and endurance racing. I talk about Spartan. There's a lot of brands out there. I race a lot of different things, but I do most of them, and that's really where my story begins. But um,
Mhm.
the thing about it is, for me, it's not a hobby; it's a lifestyle, and that
Mm.
lifestyle focuses on being the best version of myself in all aspects of my life. And
Mhm.
part of that is, we were talking about waking up in the morning, right? Well,
Mhm.
I didn't this morning, but most days I'm up at 4:30, 5 o'clock,
Mhm.
so I can train before work. In order to do that, I have to go to sleep at a regular time.
Mhm.
I'm 44. I need to not fall apart. So I have a stretching routine at night. I want to increase my mental toughness. So I meditate at night. And that
Mhm.
right there was the key thing that tied my worlds together. I was about 7 months
Mhm.
into doing Spartan racing and stuff like that. And, I told you when I had beaten cancer the fourth time, I found myself sort of stuck and lost,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden here I am 7 months later and my worlds collided with mind, body, and spirit.
Mm.
And really, it was, the 11th step of AA is conscious contact with God through prayer and meditation. And I hadn't been able to find a way to do that in the 2.5 years that I had been sober. I said some prayers, but I didn't know how to
Yeah.
listen. And doing that
Mhm.
meditation really just sort of tied my worlds together. And now everything that I do is about mind, body, and spirit and focusing that together.
Mhm.
Is endurance racing a new addiction? I'm going to say no. And here's why. Because I spent the first 2 years clearing away my wreckage. I didn't replace one thing with another,
Mhm.
right? I was already sober. I was already living a good life. And yes, things can't exist in a vacuum, but I had replaced my drinking with a program of sobriety, right? I have a
Right.
fellowship. I have people and friends and activities. Like, trust me, I don't have idle time. And even if I did, that's not what comes into my mind. So
Mhm.
what this has done now is allowed me a vehicle of constant improvement, in
Mm.
all aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And, one thing like, so my life is where sobriety comes first. My entire life is not sobriety. It's not what it's,
Mm. Mhm.
I don't just constantly think about sobriety and, oh, is this fit? Like, I don't have to. It's a natural decision for me. And so the endurance racing touches other aspects of my life that does include being purposeful and intentional with my time. Yes,
Yeah.
physical fitness, constantly challenging yourself, seeking to get uncomfortable, being comfortable in uncomfortable situations, which is
Mhm.
not for nothing, part of why I drank. I was
Yeah.
uncomfortable, so I would drink.
Yeah.
Now
Totally.
I embrace it. Now I pursue
Mm.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
situations because that's how I become comfortable with myself. I don't need the alcohol to help me get there.
Yeah. I mean, it's that right there, right? Like all of this, it's like getting comfortable with the discomfort that I think so many of us use booze to get comfortable with. And now it's like these acts of last night I went to a networking event and I was like, I wasn't excited. I held some nerves, like I was just like, ugh. But I like went and I'm like, I'm so proud of myself because like building that little muscle and being comfortable with it, like that will now help me be comfortable doing other uncomfortable things. So it like builds off each other.
It does. It's good habits are a gateway drug.
Mhm.
And
100%.
a lot of times, someone will look at this behind me and be like, "Oh, I can't do all that." Well, guess what? 7 years ago, neither could I.
Mhm.
When I ran
Yeah.
the Boston Marathon in 2018, 6 months before the Boston Marathon, I couldn't run a mile.
Wow.
Like, just start, these
Yeah. Yeah.
it's I get it. One of the thing I think that keeps people out of sobriety is they say, "I don't know how I can stay sober for the rest of my life."
Mhm, mhm,
I I don't know how I can stay sober for the rest of my life. I'm just trying to stay sober today.
mhm,
And that works for me. And that one day at a time living works in every aspect of my life. And I'll tell you, I am
mm.
almost stay humble, knock on wood. I was going to say I've almost perfected that, but that's not true. I'm doing well with one day at a time living,
Yeah.
and here's why. I left my job 4 months ago, right? Like, I have nothing but blank space right now. I'm looking
Mhm,
over at my whiteboard, looking at my goals for my business, and let me just tell you, the revenue goal is shy. All right. So it's
mhm.
so easy to get lost in what I don't have. And oh my God, in 2 months, if I can't pay the mortgage and this and that, but all that anxiety, all these things that I can't control, what I can do is live for today. I can look at the actions I can take
Mhm.
today, the steps I can take today, and make sure that I'm just doing the right things today. And that has
Yeah.
to be good enough. And I think we're blessed of people in, people in recovery who have learned about that. Like I always say that I feel bad for people who aren't alcoholics because if I'm in a bad
Mhm,
mood at 11:30 today, at noon I have a reprieve.
mm, mhm.
When I go to a meeting today, I'm like, I get to hit reset. What do normal people do?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, and, I mean, at the end of the day, if you really something today is literally all we have, right? We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow is gonna look like.
Yep.
If we're any I love you pointed out whether it's like sobriety or anxiety or it's so funny, we think we have like all this control and you're like, you can't worry about tomorrow. That's already or
Nope.
yesterday, it's already passed. Tomorrow, we have no idea what's gonna happen, even if we plan. So I love this idea of like that's if we're really open and honest about it, we're like, shit, today is this moment is all I can control, right? And then the next moment.
I was literally thinking that as you're saying that, and it actually caused me to focus more intently on here and actually be present.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because it's easy to do. And I love this idea of like, you're just sober today, and then you're just sober tomorrow, and you're sober the next day. And how much better life is when we actually look at it that way, instead of thinking about what we did 2 weeks ago or what we're going to do in 2 months. And it takes work too. It takes intention and work.
And I can't speak for other people, but I am blessed because I don't 4 or 5 thoughts in 10 years. That's nothing.
Yeah. That's impressive.
It could have been 4 or 5 thoughts an hour. And,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to get, I don't ever want to get cocky about that because I know what the other side looks like. And that's why I continue to do the right things. And that's why I continue to be aware. And I mean, the last thought I had was 4 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, whatever, it was October. I had a race I did in Texas. It was mile 12 of a 30-mile race, and I badly injured my leg, and I had to get taken off the course. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. My flight wasn't until 8 p.m. the next day, and I am in middle of nowhere, Texas. And I can't walk, so I'm going to have to lie down or sit down or something. And the very first thought that came into my mind as I'm driving away from the venue was, man, I could just spend this next 24, like 36 hours in a bar. So what did I do? I grabbed my shit and I drove to the airport.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. Like, just like that. Because that was a bad thought. I didn't even want to do it, but that thought crept up and I was like, oh, bad time. We're out. Let's go home.
Yeah.
You know, by the time I got to the airport, it was gone. Like by the time I got in the car, it was gone, but it wasn't worth messing with.
Yeah. I'm
I
curious.
don't know if I'll be able to come.
Oh, really?
I mean, if I go back out, I do know what will happen. If I go back out, I'll drink till I die. There's no question. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
And God willing, it'll be quick, but chances are it won't.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really a powerful thing to, be like, no, this is no, I got to get out. Like I'm out. Like I'll book whatever flight it is, whatever that costs. Like I am leaving this place.
Yeah. It was pull the ripcord, save my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's good.
Well, Nick, as we kind of wrap up, and we're going to put how to get a hold of you for your speaking, for all the work that you do, your book, and then show notes. But I'm curious if somebody's listening, knowing there's not a one size fits all for any of this, but what is maybe if somebody's listening and kind of in this place of questioning their relationship with alcohol or knowing they need to, do something different, what's maybe 1 or 2 tips of advice you'd give somebody?
I can only speak for myself, right? Which is, I had to know, I had to simply accept that I can't drink alcohol. And I also had to accept that my problems with alcohol weren't about alcohol, which is why I needed a program. I can't speak for other people, but that's where my experience drove me to. I tried Nick's Anonymous and it didn't work. Just putting down the drink. I put it down for 4 months and I hated every second of it. So I needed a different program. And I would say this, though, that you said 1 or 2, but let me say the third part, something we talked about earlier. I think it's important to know that there's life beyond alcohol because there's only one thing in the world I can't do. I go to happy hours. I buy rounds. I buy my wife wine. I pour her a drink. I can walk down the alcohol aisle in the supermarket. I go to concerts. Like I can go anywhere. I can do anything. 4 times, 5 times being around alcohol in 10 years, I was uncomfortable. I left. That's it. The rest of the time, I can go anywhere and do anything except drink. And that's it. I can live my fullest, best life. I just can't drink alcohol. And drinking alcohol, even if you're not a drunkard and alcoholic, prevents you from driving sometimes if you're responsible. You might feel crummy the next day. You don't want to do certain things, blah, blah, blah. I have no restrictions. None. There are no restrictions on my life. I just can't drink alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good reminder. It's, that's like literally the one thing you can't do, but it opens up to do everything else in this world.
Yeah. It gives me, there's more I can do now than there is before.
Yeah, for sure. You said Nick's Anonymous. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, you're saying your own version.
That was when I tried putting in my own.
Oh, I love that.
I referred to it as this program of Nick's Anonymous. And I will tell you, I'll speak for all drunks on this one. Nick's Anonymous was not a good program.
0 if I recommend. 0 stars.
0 stars, 2 thumbs down.
That's funny. It took me, I was like, I've never heard of that. And then it's early.
That's why. It was a failed program. One person tried it and it didn't work.
Hey, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other somewhat name anonymous that have not worked either. So I'm sure you're not the only one. And I know you are, sober, you at A, but I'm curious, when you hear the word soberish, what does that mean to you?
I make an assumption that either the soberish individual, it's about what substance they do or don't take. I'm guessing
Mm-hmm.
there's not complete abstinence. The other
Right.
thought would be the approach to being soberish. So, I
Mm-hmm.
don't judge anyone else's program or not program at all. It's not my
Yeah.
place to do so. And
Right.
I just know what didn't work for me and what
100%.
did work for me. And I
Yeah.
also know that a lot of people have drinking problems who may not really be alcoholic either, like
Mm-hmm.
there's different things. So,
Yeah.
I also have friends who put the drink down and they still smoke weed or they still do
Mm-hmm.
some other things but the drink was their problem, not the
Yeah.
other thing, or the drink led to this, it didn't lead to that and what
Right.
have you. So,
Yeah.
at the end of it, it's soberish to me means someone like yourself has
Mm-hmm.
identified a problem and have
Mm-hmm.
taken measures to reduce and or eliminate the problem and
Yeah.
the impacts of it, but either total abstinence wasn't required or just isn't being done.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. I think it's, I'm in anybody's corner who's doing anything about their drinking, whatever it looks like, right? Whatever version that looks like for them. Whether it's AA and complete abstinence or sober, there's California, whatever it looks like. I love anybody that's
I'm
kind
pretty
of,
sober.
yeah, I don't know. There's all sorts of, it gets to be a heated debate, but I think to your point, it's like, what is your problem and how do you need to resolve it? And that can look
If I
100
try to
different
control
ways.
other people, I'm gonna get drunk.
Yeah.
Like, me having an opinion on someone else's approach to their own alcohol or sobriety or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, well, that's none of my goddamn business.
Mm,
And how is that gonna help me stay sober?
it doesn't.
Like, I don't need to force my way on you. This isn't
Yeah.
religion.
Yeah.
Like, and it shouldn't be treated like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's why it gets bastardized. So, I just
Yeah.
know that let's say if I had stayed sober from Nick's Anonymous these last 10 years, I would not be the person that I am today
Mm, mhm.
because I did need something else. Putting
Yeah,
down the drink
absolutely.
was just a symptom for me.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you loved this episode, which we hope you did, please leave us a review or share with a friend. And if you're ready to explore your own version of soberish, head over to soberishuprising.com. And remember, everything you want is on the other side of saying no to that drink.